like to call to order a meeting of the Healdsburg City Council for January 20th, 2026. Happy New Year, everybody. Can we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Higley?
Here.
Councilmember Kelly?
Here.
Councilmember Mitchell?
Here, sorry.
Vice Mayor Edwards?
Here.
Mayor Herod?
Here. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Do we need to take a roll call vote because we have a remote council member?
Okay, yeah, let's do a roll call, please. Thank you.
Sorry.
Councilmember Higley?
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly?
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Edwards?
Here.
Mayor Herod?
Here. Okay, report on closed session. We did not have a closed session. We have no announcements or presentations this evening, so we'll move on to our city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening and Happy New Year. I do have a handful of updates for you all this evening. First off, I wanted to share, because I think we all got many questions, emails this weekend, what I think the council already knows, which is just confirmation that we do not have any confirmation about any tenant for the former Rite Aid site on Healdsburg Avenue. I know there's a lot of speculation. I know there's a lot of interest and chatter. But to put it clearly, we don't have any information about a tenant. On that note, I'll also share what I think the council is familiar with. When you're looking at a retail space in a retail zoned district, even with some of the rumors out there, sometimes you'll see a comment like, who approved this? And again, to repeat, we haven't approved anything. But also, I think as a lot of people understand, but maybe not everybody is familiar, there generally isn't a process of reviewing every potential tenant. If it's a retail user in a retail site, there's a good probability we do check, but that use is allowed. If they need to make improvements to a site, there may be a building permit, but that is not an opportunity to make an up and down decision on a particular retailer. If they're putting up signs, as I'm sure they will, there's a sign permit. Again, that's just a step to make sure somebody is following our rules. But we don't make an individual decision in all likelihood about every potential retailer that might come up. With that said, I'll conclude on this one where I started. We don't have any information at this time. We are in contact with the property owners. We are also eager to see what will happen with that space, but my understanding is nothing is solidified at this time. A handful of other things I wanted to share with some events coming up and some other news. First off, in partnership with Zero Waste Sonoma, we are hosting a repair fair and clothing swap at the community center this coming Saturday, the 24th from 1 to 4. It's a little something new for us. I think the clothing swap is self-explanatory. The repair fair, what they say on the flyer is, if you can carry it in, we'll try to fix it. Sounds like a challenge. We'll see what things people can bring. I'm told that lamps and small household electronics and things like that are common, things that might be relatively simple to fix. The goal is obviously to keep things out of the waste stream and get them back in working order, but it also sounds like it could be a neat and fascinating event. So I would encourage people to show up for that if they have an interest and bring things by. Also want to note that we have a survey open right now related to our standards of cover study for the fire department. You'll all recall that this is a study that we initiated not quite a year ago, but it's been several months of work, some really intense work with our fire department, looking at data of call volumes, of talking to our staff, of talking to leadership, talking to other stakeholders in the community. And ultimately, the goal will be to make recommendations on how we deploy the resources we have most effectively to have the most effective fire department possible. We have an opportunity coming up with the passage of Measure H a couple years ago in the county, which will bring some additional revenue to us. And what we're trying to do is make sure we put that money to use as effectively as possible. Part of that process is a community survey. So the fire department, I know on their social media and the city's social media, I think, has disseminated that survey, and we'd love to get as much input as possible. I also know that we're trying, for those who don't want to do an online survey, to provide some different options. So I have a paper copy of the survey. I understand the chief put some copies outside. We'll try to spread those around town a little bit. It's available in both English and Spanish. And again, we're hoping, we're not asking people necessarily to do the technical work of deciding where fire resources might go, but simply to share their impressions and their experiences to give us feedback from the community on where those recommendations might end up. So would love to get lots of participation on that. And this city council will be seeing an update on that study in the next few months with some preliminary recommendations. So some more to come there. One more event to mention, February 3rd. At the library, we'll be hosting a transportation workshop. This is tied to safe routes to schools and corridor studies we've been completing. Safe Routes to School is a grant program that we participate in that provides additional money for safety improvements. What I'd recommend to the community is people who have an interest in how we get around town, and in particular, how we do that safely. This is a chance to come and learn from our staff, and most importantly, provide some feedback on improvements or changes that people might like to see. So this is a requirement of our grant, but we obviously try to make it as welcoming and useful as possible. So we're going to create a lot of space just for people to come in and ask questions and share feedback. So that again is February 3rd. And then lastly, one additional update I wanted to share with the council that we have received word this week that applications are now open for housing at the affordable housing site at the North Village. This has been dubbed by Burbank Housing, the developer, Bowman Place. And you may recall, this is, I think, 53, if my math is right, units of housing right adjacent to the Appalachian Hotel. It's a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. This is a little bit different than some of the affordable housing properties that we've opened in the last few years, in that it's aimed at roughly 50% to 80% of area and median income. So it's a little bit of a higher range and a broader range than we've had for some other projects. In real dollars, that equates to, obviously it depends on the size of the household, but it could be about $1,400 for a 1-bedroom unit, up to about $3,100 for a 3-bedroom. So not quite the depth of affordability that we've had on other projects, but that hopefully allows us to get other folks into affordable housing who haven't had that access in the past for some of our other projects. This project was funded differently and therefore has some different opportunities. So it's exciting to have this open. Construction is just about wrapping up. The application process will take about 3 weeks. It is not first come, first serve. So I want to stress that. It's not a mad dash to get on the list. But it is a period where we're going to do everything we can to let as many local people know that they can get on that list and be part of the lottery process. Burbank is familiar with our local preference requirements for local marketing and has signaled that they're definitely excited and game to work with us on getting the word out locally. We're in communication with Corazon about an application assistance workshop, which we hope to do very quickly. We will use our partners and our channels to make sure that we get the word out to people who are here in the community, either working or living. So this is exciting. It's been a long time coming. And if you've been up there, the property is just about finished. So we're excited to see lease up coming. And one last update that we shared with the council a couple of weeks ago. This is early, but this is an election year. And this will be our first year with district elections. So 2 of our 5 city council districts will be up for election this year in November. We are doing a lot of talking at City Hall about how we can share information with people who may not have followed along for all of the gory details as we went through the process of creating those districts last year. simple questions of, will I be voting this year? Do I live in one of the districts that's up? Which district do I live in? So you can expect to see a lot more coming out of City Hall in terms of getting that information out. But we did launch a tool which is online now on our website where people can simply just plug in their address and see what district they're in, and then zoom back out a little bit and have a look at the districts and understand which ones are up for election and what those shapes are. Because again, we all lived it very closely last year, but a lot of people will probably be seeing that for the first time. So I just wanted to reiterate that that's out there. We've shared that on social media. We'll keep doing so. I imagine people will start paying more attention as we get into the summer, but just wanted to share that we're doing our best to get more information out about that process since it is coming. It's a lot of updates since we haven't met in a little while, but I think that's all I have. I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
I'll start with the last item, just a question on one of the communication pieces that people have been, not just where do you live and what district, but also this in the first time of the history of Healdsburg, people can only vote for one person. So I think educating the public on that they only will get one vote, as opposed to in the past when they've had 3 votes or 2 votes, it's a big departure. So I think doing education on that would be helpful. And then just with respect to, it's a consent item, but you touched on the new affordable that is now the application window is open with Burbank at North Village. We have a map item about the other 27 condo unit, middle income unit development at North Village. Is it possible for us to, at a future date, get an update on just the status of that? Or do you have an update on where those units are? Because that's kind of the last piece of North Village that hasn't been constructed yet.
I'm looking at Scott. I know they're making good progress. If they're not in for permits, we expect them, they are in. So they are in for permits. We'd be happy to, devote more time to this at any point. But they're in for building permits and in review. So that's good news. That suggests we're hopefully looking at a groundbreak in I'd say the next handful of months.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
I just had a quick comment on the affordable housing. It's really exciting. I saw the post that went out today, so it's really exciting to see that the applications are open for that. And I'm glad you mentioned Core Zone, but I want to make sure that we're also reaching out directly to the chamber to make sure that the local businesses are aware. And then we had done a presentation to the local realtors, and I think it'd be important to do an open house as part of the education process so that our local realtors, who are the first to really have contact with anybody moving in or out of our town, have a real clear understanding, because I think there's a lot of people that don't understand what affordable housing is or means or what it looks like and what it feels like, so I think it'd be important to do that during this application process, because I hear all the time, I've got a teacher that's living in a garage that, teaches at the high school or whatever, that's looking for a spot. So I think we want to be as proactive in getting the applications filled up as quickly as possible.
And Councilman Hagan will ask my question. So the city put out all the details on what the application process is, who they apply to for this?
We're going through that process right now of developing as much as we can and getting it out there. But yes, that information will be included.
And then will the date that are applications being accepted now for this lottery process?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And it closes on February 9th, according to the flyer.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Councilmember Mitchell? Okay. All right, moving on to public comment. This time is set aside to receive comments from the public regarding matters of general interest not on the agenda, but related to City Council business. Pursuant to the Brown Act, however, the City Council cannot consider any issues or take action on any requests during this comment period. We have any public comment this evening? Welcome.
Hello, we are the Warm Springs 4-H Club Government and Civics Project. My name is Tatum Kiff. I'm a senior at Healdsburg High, and this is my 4th year in the project.
Hi, I'm Georgia Miller. I'm a junior, and this is my 4th year in the project.
Hi, I'm Ava Campbell. I'm also junior, and this is also my 4th year in the project.
Hello, I'm Jack Reichel. I am in 8th grade, and this is my 2nd year in the project.
So, after talking with the city manager, we were inspired to amplify the interests of younger generations of Healdsburg when it came to activity and recreational areas in our city. All of us have grown up in Healdsburg and would love to see changes that can be enjoyed by all ages, not just little kids or adults.
So to bridge the disconnect that government officials might have with the youth, we created a survey for high school and junior high kids to fill out. That way they can respond and talk about their interests in places to put in things like beach volleyball courts, a pump track, and accessibility to transportation. And then the youth will have an opportunity to respond using the survey and then share any interests that we might not have thought of, and they can put it in there themselves, and then we can bring that back to you guys.
So the feedback from this survey, it will be used by the city to make future plans and changes, we hope, in parks, transportation, community events, and more. And when we will receive all of these responses at the end of this survey, we will come back, if you approve this, and present them to you guys so you can use them in developing the city and new infrastructure.
This survey will be sent out to grades 6th through 12th at the junior high, high school, THS, and St. John's. The survey will begin February 2nd and run through February 20th. Our next steps will be presenting our project plan to the HUSD school board and administrators. Thank you for your time tonight.
All right, thank you. Anybody else for public comment? Welcome.
Thank you, Linda Cade, Mill District. I wasn't really expecting to say anything tonight, but I just would like to appreciate these young people for doing what they're doing. That was one of my platforms that came up when I was running, that we need something to do for our youth. A teen club, and Rite Aid's empty now. So wouldn't that be fun to have a club for teenagers to be able to cook for each other, podcast, learn, study, and the river needs to be brought back to what it used to be, where they can play volleyball and swim and maybe work in the snack shack. So I really commend you for doing that. And if there's anything I can do to help, I would appreciate if you let me know. And I'm also collecting funds for Center for Life Choices in Clear Lake. A friend of mine works there, and if you think mothers and children should have more options other than abortion, then put some money in this bottle for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else for public comment this evening? Okay, well, we'll close public comment and move on to the consent calendar. Understand that you need to recuse on 4 different items, but let's go ahead and do a roll call vote on all items except C, D, E, and F.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve items 6A, B, G, H, I, J, K, L, and M.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Higley,
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly,
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Edwards,
Yes.
Mayor Harrod.
Yes.
Mayor Harrod, I live within 500 feet of the Grove Street, some of the improvements along the Grove Street Improvement Project corridor. And so because we have a number of items related to public utility easements regarding that project, I will recuse myself from this item, which is item 6, C, D, E, and F. So I will
Great.
move away
Thank
from
you.
the dais.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve C, D, E, and F?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Higley,
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Edwards,
Yes.
Mayor Harrod.
Yes. Okay, thank you. And now we do not have any public hearings this evening. We'll move on to old business and city council protocols with Assistant City Manager April Mitz.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Herod, Vice Mayor Edwards, and City Council members. So just wait for the presentation to pop up. This is the City Council Protocol Remote Participation Discussion. So first, just to give a brief background, which we've reiterated a couple times so far on this particular item, one of the current City Council goals is to update the City Council's governance protocols. On August 4th, the City Council did appoint a council subcommittee of Councilmember Mitchell and Councilmember Kelly. On October 20th, we did provide an update to City Council, and specifically, we received City Council direction regarding ballot measures. Next slide. So just a reminder of some of the progress that we've made in updating the protocols. And just remember, all of these protocols, these are recommendations that we will bring back at a later time for full City Council direction and discussion on it. But this is what we've already wrestled through with the subcommittee and staff, is update gender neutrality. So that's just an administrative update to the protocols. The protocols for receiving and disseminating written public comments. We updated that section of the protocols to reflect current practices. City Council correspondence, we are reviewing that section of it and then providing any necessary updates. For minutes, the recommendation on there is just update the timing of the minutes, that they would come to City Council within 60 days of the meeting itself. Rules of recusal, we updated this specifically addressing rules of recusal during the consent item. So you saw that demonstrated tonight with Councilmember Kelly. During a consent item, instead of having to actually leave the dais, the council member just pushes their chair back for those items. Voting on non-resolution items, we did update that section to add that a roll call vote must be made for the record on those items. Public hearing process, we currently have a public hearing process within the protocols, but we have added some proposed language in there to really solidify and more, I guess, tighten up the procedural aspect of the public hearing process. So that's going to be coming forward. City Council goals, before the protocols mentioned that we had come 4 times in updating the City Council goals. We have updated this to twice per year. Several different changes or updates to the meeting agendas. A lot of the updates that were made were just to reflect the current practice, such as the content and the order. Another item that we did is within the agenda, or within the agenda itself, we had new business and we had old business, so we combined that into business items, so there wasn't the confusion on where do you put an item. How to place items on the agenda, it's currently on there, but we've updated the language that allows an item to be placed on the agenda by a council member with concurrence of one other council member as opposed to the majority. Again, these are the recommendations that will come at a later time. The minutes format, we're making some recommendations to potentially change the minutes over to action minutes instead of detailed minutes. Also knowing that we will still have video that follows the city's retention policy. And then also updated some language on removing items from the consent calendar by the City Council. Another update that we've done is on proclamations, is limiting the number of proclamations per council meeting. We added language on the policy on ballot measures as directed by City Council at our last meeting in October. And then we also added some language regarding districts, and just really reiterating that while the elections are done per district, the council members serve the city as a whole and serve in the best interests of the city as a whole and not their particular district. So we added some language in there for that item. So next slide. So that is just a summary of what we've already discussed. What is actually in front of the council tonight is discussion regarding remote participation. And after talking about this for several meetings, doing a lot of research, the City Council subcommittee and the city staff agree with the recommendation. The subcommittee does recommend that we continue with the traditional in-person and written public comment, as opposed to shifting over to a hybrid version of that. So the next couple of slides will just review the reasons why, the rationale, and the different areas that we looked at to explore the remote participation. Next slide. So a little history on remote participation. As we are all aware, March 2020 necessitated remote participation by pretty much all councils, committees, any type of government board. In November 2021, as the pandemic started ratcheting down, some of the restrictions were being lifted. Healdsburg instituted doing hybrid meetings, so that still allowed for remote public participation. In 2022, Assembly Bill 2449 passed, and what that did is that amended the Brown Act, which allowed for participation under emergency circumstances. That's only one of the areas. There were several different areas, but one of the emergency circumstances allowed council members to still participate via Zoom, via remote participation, if there's an emergency that arises, such as the council member is ill, maybe there's a family member that they're taking care of that's also out ill, but they still want to be able to participate in the meeting. AB 2449 allowed that. However, those provisions did expire at the end of calendar year 2025. Although that came out in 2022, in October 2023, up until that time, Healdsburg still had hybrid participation, but Healdsburg did discontinue remote participation, and that was primarily due to disruptive and hate-filled comments that was happening to cities across the region, otherwise known as Zoom bombing. And then in 2025, this is the most recent legislation, so it's Senate Bill 707. This provides amendments to the Brown Act, and there's really two main categories. So the first category is it expands and clarifies procedural and participation requirements. That applies to every entity. And then the second category is it expands access and applies to eligible legislative bodies. And so once that legislation did come out, the city of Healdsburg is not an eligible legislative body. So if you are an eligible legislative body, you are then required to do the remote participation to incorporate that within your systems. Since we are not considered an eligible legislative body because of our size, we are not required to enact those sections of SB 707. So next slide. So remote participation, what is the purpose of the exploration? There is benefits to remote participation, and in particular, it can expand public engagement. So someone who might not be able to come to the meeting in person can maybe log in online and actually be able to participate that way, giving their public comment. And it also allows flexibility for council members. Council members can participate via teleconference, as Councilmember Mitchell is doing tonight, but there are really strict regulations regarding that participation. It has to be noticed when the agenda is published. At the same time, within 72 hours, a notice has to be provided at wherever your location is. So there's a lot of requirements that have to take place. If we allowed remote participation for people to make Zoom public comment, it would also allow the council members to have the same flexibility where they can participate remotely without having those other stringent requirements placed on them. So those are some reasons why we explored it and some of the benefits. Next slide. This gives you a really quick recap of remote participation for other agencies within Sonoma County. So as you can see, all but one of the agencies do stream meetings, including City of Healdsburg. Currently, only 2 allow for live remote public comment. Santa Rosa is not included in this, but they do fall under the parameters of SB 707 and are considered eligible, and will be making that shift sometime in 2026. And then out of all the agencies, 4 of them do have guidelines for removal under certain circumstances for remote participation. Next slide. So when the subcommittee and staff members looked at this item, there were several concerns when it came to remote participation. And this just provides a high-level overview of what some of the concerns were. They're more detailed inside the staff report. The first is technical challenge and reliability issues. As we know, sometimes we do have connectivity problems. We have audio or visual failures. Sometimes the user is unfamiliar with technology. And so sometimes that actually does disrupt the meetings. Under the requirements of 707, SB 707, if there is a disruption to the meeting for audio, visual, or for connectivity issues, there are certain circumstances where the meeting actually wouldn't go forward. So that was something that was, that was a concern for us, just knowing that sometimes we do have a time crunch for some of our items that are being brought before City Council. The next area is reduced meeting decorum and engagement. So virtual environments can make it more difficult to manage decorum and then also maintain focused participation when you do have several people in the remote environment. Next area of concern was security and disruption risks. I believe this area had a lot of the conversation, a lot of it revolving around Zoom bombs, people coming in, and how do you actually stop the disruptive comments? How do you do it in an efficient, effective manner? And then the other thing that is starting to pop up occasionally is where people actually take over the meetings. So that way our clerk, if the meeting was completely taken over, they hacked into our system somehow, our staff, our clerk would not have any way to actually shut down the meeting. So that was something that was of great concern to us when we talked about the security and disruption risks. Equity concerns related to technology access. Not all residents have reliable internet access or appropriate devices. So this is something, while we would like to be able to open it up and have people have the greatest accessibility, this particular item might inadvertently actually cause a little more of a disconnect between people who have the ability to remote in and the people who might not. And then finally, administrative and staffing impacts and added risks. Managing the remote participation requires additional staff time, training, resources to coordinate technology, moderate public comments, and also troubleshoot in real time. Essentially, this is another point of failure that could happen during the meetings. What a lot of the residents don't realize, and sometimes the council and even staff, is how much behind the scenes work happens in real time during the council meeting by the city clerk. And so this would just add, if we allowed remote participation, another layer onto that. So if something does go wrong during the council meeting, it's one more point where a city clerk would need to try to fix it on demand without actually having the ability of, if you test something a couple hours early, that you have the time to fix it, where this is actually would be live. Next slide. So as stated at the beginning of the presentation, the recommendation is to continue with the traditional in-person and written public comments. So while remote participation does offer benefits, when looking at the advantages of the benefits, we felt like they were far outweighed by some of the operational and governance concerns that we had. If we stay with the recommendation, it would mean we'd continue to conduct meetings fully in person. So there wouldn't be any change to what we're currently doing right now. We'd maintain the status quo for traditional teleconferencing for city council members. So again, giving that 72 hours notice. And then public participation will continue to be encouraged through either in-person or written public comment, and that could be physical or email public comment. So there are still a lot of ways that members of the community can participate. And with that, we are taking it to City Council tonight for feedback, considerations, any questions you might have of the subcommittee or staff regarding the recommendation. And then once, if you want to go to the next slide really quickly. The next steps, once we have council direction tonight, the subcommittee and staff will continue to meet, compile recommended changes for council review, and then we're estimated to bring a full packet back to the city council by March 31st of 2026 for city council consideration, feedback, input, and any recommendation for changes. So with that, I will turn it over to the council for discussion and direction on the recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting topic before us here tonight. I'd like to start off with clarifying questions from the council. Do we have any questions to begin with at this point? No questions for staff? I guess I have one, and I think there's other questions about that may come up in our general discussion that I have, but in terms of the item in general, Is there I want to get an idea of the scope of the direction that you want from the council. So, I mean, I think there might be just a yes or no here, but there might be a sort of gray area too in terms of, suggestions that I've heard that if we opened up for Zoom comment, that we might do it temporarily, or that we might move comment to another part of the agenda or some things along those lines. So it's not just a yes or no thing, but maybe you could reflect on what your expectations are going into this. And maybe council members Mitchell and Kelly would like to chime in on this one as well. But
Yes, the item tonight is specifically regarding the remote participation. So what we are hoping to get out of it tonight is just final direction from City Council, whether they support the recommendation of the subcommittee or if they want to look at an alternative, such as that you suggested, either looking at maybe a temporary, a pilot program, or even just saying, no, we want to go forward with remote participation, and we'd build that in the protocols, and then also establish certain guidelines for how to deal with disruptions.
okay, thank you. Go ahead.
I'll just respond with respect to, we didn't, once we talked to staff about what goes on behind the scenes to prepare for doing Zoom public comment, the idea of like piloting it, the amount of energy that would have to go into it, or like the change of course wasn't just like a basic flip the switch. And so I think it needed to be, we said we wanted to like make a threshold decision and not kind of be overly fluid with staff because of the amount of energy that would have to go into making the change. And not doing it on a temporary basis, but like making a definitive decision.
Thank you. Councilmember Mitchell, did you have anything?
Yeah, I would reiterate what Councilmember Kelly said. And the more we, I think going into this, I figured we would say, oh yeah, we should do remote Zoom and whatnot. But the barriers to that were a lot, and the concerns just kept piling up as far as the difficulty of that, the staff time, and then hearing more and more about places that are getting hacked. I mean, so that you have absolutely no control, as this seems to be happening more frequently. So just all of that concern and running meetings in a way that are productive and respectful, I think that was a concern as well. So we came to the, surprised a little bit, me, that we came to this recommendation after a lot of conversation about the pros and cons. Also, the new Senate bill, what is it, 707? Is that what it is? Seems to be, they're not even really sure what they want to do with that. I mean, there were a lot of ifs, thens, and we're not sures with that, and we'd be under those rules. So. And I think it just became really cumbersome in our minds.
Thank you. On this question of the staffing and the administration of it all, I think it is sort of a revelation to people to know about that aspect of it, and it's a very important one. I appreciate that we're talking about it, but I'd like to get just a little bit more detail, maybe from the city clerk or from assistant city manager, about what that entails, just so that the public has a slightly deeper understanding of what that's about.
Yes, so to move to remote participation would require an additional staff member to assist with the operation of Zoom and the PowerPoint and managing public comment speakers and kind of more of the back end operation of how adding remote participation to council meetings would work.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. And then I had one more question that I think will kind of help frame the discussion before we go to public comment. A lot of people, understand the concern about Zoom bombing and abusive comments and so on, and say, well, can't you just turn it off and hang up on those folks? And of course, the answer is no, you can't just do that. They have rights as well. And so I've already run these questions by our city attorney, but I'd just like to have her briefly go over what specific behaviors would allow us to end a comment, and who would make that call?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to echo Councilmember Mitchell's description of SB 707, which is a very confusing piece of legislation amending the Brown Act. We are expecting some cleanup legislation to come out. I think it was intended to clarify and simplify some of the provisions from the prior legislation, but in the meantime, a bunch of attorneys are running around trying to figure out how to apply it. And Healdsburg certainly is fortunate in that it is not subject to many of its provisions. To answer your question, SB 707 does speak to that issue, and it mentions that cities are able to restrict, or it speaks to removing someone from an online meeting in the same way that it could remove someone from an in-person meeting for being disruptive. But that doesn't really change the standard for removal. So it is still the case, even after SB 707, it is still the case that the only time we can remove someone from a council meeting or on Zoom, cut off their microphone and stop them from giving public comment is that if they are so disruptive that their comments stop the council from doing any business. On Zoom, that's difficult. Usually what we saw prior when we were getting Zoom bombed is that we would cut off someone from speaking, often when their comments were just completely off topic. Those comments also happen to be, in most cases, racist and anti-Semitic, but they were also off topic. That has not changed. That is the only reason that we can stop someone from giving public comment. For doing that, the mayor would need to give a warning. To your second question, as to who makes that decision, that is up to the mayor. I will tell you in practice, the many times that I have been through meetings that have been Zoom bombed at this point, the way it generally works is the mayor and the city attorney make the decision, one or the other or in conjunction in the moment, and one of us directs the city clerk to shut off the microphone.
Thank you. And it was mentioned in the report that some cities have guidelines for removal, and you're saying that the legal aspects that you just described sort of supersede those. Is that correct?
Yes, the guidelines for removal that I have seen and written usually just echo the statutes. They might have sort of aspirational elements that say that we would like people to treat each other civilly, but as far as what the law permits, we are only able to remove someone from a meeting or cut off their ability to give public comment if their comments are irrelevant during an agenda item, outside the jurisdiction of the city during public comment on non-agendized items, or causing a disruption.
So if they're swearing, that doesn't really cross that line, does it?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have any comments or questions before we go to public comment on this?
I guess I have a couple of, clarifying questions for this. It's very, very complicated on that. And is it possible, this is kind of a thought that somebody might have, of having two public comment periods, say one at the beginning of the meeting for in-room and then moving Zoom comments to the end? Or do we have to, because of the Brown Act, keep them all together as one?
I've not actually seen that. Has
Are you talking
anyone
about
seen?
non-agenda item?
Yes, non-agenda
Because
items.
we would still have to do each item, right?
Right.
To have
Yeah,
its
but
own-
each item would be on topic, whereas when we're opening it up to the general public, to have those present in the room who took the time or it was convenient for them to come in to make comments and then move a Zoom public non-agenda item comments to the end of the meeting.
I have not seen that. Offhand, I do not see a problem with that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll move this to, oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
No, that's, I just had a question to clarify that with city attorney. If we do Zoom for non-agenda items, we have to do Zoom, I think this is what Councilmember Kelly was getting to, on all items, right? Wouldn't, you can't just do it selectively that way, can you?
Oh, absolutely. Zoom would be for every item. I think what Councilmember Kelly was suggesting is that we would have public comment on agendized items with the item. And so we would have to allow at that time, public comment from members in the chamber, from community members in the chambers, as well as people on Zoom. And then we could either split public comment on non-agendized items to allow the people in the chambers to speak earlier in the meeting and push public comment on non-agendized items for Zoom alone until the end of the meeting. I think that was Councilmember Kelly's suggestion, or Councilmember, or Vice Mayor Edwards' suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go to public comment now. Is there anybody here tonight who'd like to speak on this item? And seeing none, we'll return it back to the council. Okay, who'd like to go first on this? Okay, Councilmember Hagley.
I'll be short and to the point. First, thank you to the subcommittee. It's a lot of work, and as you can see, a lot of detail in here. And I support the subcommittee's recommendation to continue with traditional in-person and written public comments at council and commission meetings.
Thank you.
I was on the subcommittee, so you know what our recommendation was, but I'll just add that I think we balanced a lot of different things, right? We were kind of weighing the pros and cons of a number of different pieces. I think what we know now and what we've seen in other cities, in some of the other agencies that I sit on that still allow Zoom public comment, some of the tenor of what not even the Zoom bombing when they've like taken over the entire meeting. And I think we've all heard about what happened to some of our county staff and the racist comments that were made. But I have personally observed some pretty disturbing behavior at state agency meetings where Zoom public comment is still allowed. And some of it directed at our staff. And of our very diverse staff, and which really is representative of the diversity of California, and something that I think we all, aspire to be proud of. But to sit in a room and to have to legally listen to a caller making the most, like, you can't even fathom the level of disgusting, racist remarks that are being hurled at people who are doing incredible work on behalf of our communities or on behalf of our state, and that legally we weren't allowed to do anything about it, and watching people like sit there and just have to kind of absorb it. It is a level of kind of forcing people to be put through a pretty traumatic situation publicly that felt punitive, and that we couldn't do anything to kind of fix it. It's a little bit different than people at their kitchen table saying, hey, we really want to call into the city council meeting and tell you what we want to do about the microtransit shuttle item, and we really wish we could do that. And I think the response in my mind is like, well, shoot me an email. I'm happy to, if you can't make it into the meeting and it's going to be up on the agenda. I feel like the balance of whose voices are not being heard because of this policy. And I still feel that there are so many different avenues for people within our community who want to actively engage in this process to still be able to communicate with a relatively accessible council, that I felt like on balance, if one thing being the extreme and the other being the extreme, that keeping it as the current policy is an okay practice. And frankly, it's what the vast majority of cities, especially those in Sonoma County, are continuing to do. So I didn't feel like we were out of step with kind of the direction of what other cities are doing as well.
Thank you. It's obvious you put a lot of thought and care into this. I appreciate that comment. Vice Mayor Edwards?
Yeah, this is a really difficult one for me because starting my public speaking and political career on Zoom, it was really an extremely useful tool, but it's kind of like the invention of fire. It was nice, but it got kind of out of control, and it can be used for, really dangerous and destructive uses. And we don't have the ability to control how it's used. And that, to me, I participated in a seminar on SB 707. And it didn't hit me at the beginning of why did they limit this to 6 cities over 60,000? Why were these limits? And it turns out that it's very complicated for smaller cities with less staff to really have the staff to address this issue. And so looking at all of those things of the really limitations of how you can control it, the chat is a problem with it. It's not only just the speaking of the Zoom bombing, but the actual chat. How do you control that? The questions are just so great. And for our small size and for our smaller city, it's difficult for people to get across town, but I still think it's not a large inconvenience to where it takes a half hour or an hour to get across town to attend a meeting. Not that that is great, but I just could not find a way with our staff, with our size, to say, yes, Ron, this sways you this way. So I think that the subcommittee did a good job. I think the staff did a good job of really looking into this. It wasn't just, well, we don't like it. It was really actual details that make it very difficult to open this up for a city of our size. So I think the staff recommendation is a good one at this time.
Thank you.
I would like to say, leave it kind of to revisit maybe at some point in the future, but at this current time, current environment, I think that we have better decorum with our meetings. People have the ability to input. I read emails right up until 5:45 coming into the meetings, so we do have access, and I hope we continue the public to understand that.
Thank you. I think the direction is pretty clear here. I just wanted to say a few comments, and if anybody wants to respond to that, they're welcome to. But I came into this with a pretty open mind on which way this should go, because I think we all agree the public input is super important and really critical to what we do, and it's a shame that we can't just open it up and expect the best to happen. Technical problems aside, there's a lot of really solid reasons why this shouldn't happen at this point in time. I agree with Vice Mayor Edwards that if we really had a lot of input from the public saying we want it back, that we could revisit it at this point. I mean, that there's, I think initially there was some regret when we stopped offering Zoom input, but it's died down, and hopefully people feel that that they have avenues available to them, and I think that's really true. It's not just the ability to write to us. I've always invited people to just say, call me, and I'll call them, and anybody who writes to me gets my phone number. I'm not going to even put it on the internet, but it's easily available, and I'm really relish the opportunity to talk to anybody. And I think that's true in a lot of cases for most of us. And so it's just important to mention that that the spirit of the council is to listen to people, and that there is some regret that this avenue is so problematic for the staff. And I think about the young people who are here tonight. If they were, we've had younger people here even that would have to endure some of the hateful, abusive, and vulgar speech that we've heard in this chamber, that's really not encouraging of public comment in a general way, right? It really actually quite discouraging. And so I see that aspect of it as well. So if there isn't any other comments from anybody, looks like we're good. Then I think, pardon me? Oh, Evelyn, did you have your hand up? Yeah.
Yeah, I did. And I don't need to say this, but I will anyway. I appreciate what you're saying about people reaching out, and that was part of our conversation. We do have the process where emails can go to the city council, the city clerk looks at those, they get attached to the staff reports and so on. So, and maybe we can look into a more robust, easier way for people to look at our website and make a comment, you know, whether it's click here and you have a little box to fill out or something like that. But I think that's something future wise. But yeah, I think at what you said, Mayor, is the fact that we all look at our emails, we all read them, we're careful about that. So we're accessible, and yeah, enough said. Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, of course, there probably is some room for improvement in terms of the website, but we'll leave that for another day. But I think you have your direction then on this item. Okay, so we'll go ahead and close that and move on to new business, draft work plan for development of a potential on-demand microtransit shuttle program. Back to Assistant City Manager Mitz.
Great, thank you again, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. So next slide. So a little bit of background on this particular item is in October 2023, the City Council did adopt the Healdsburg's Climate Mobilization Strategy, or CMS. There was one defined phase in the CMS strategy, and that was for years 1 through 3 is phase 1, and then subsequent phases would occur in years 4 through 7. Phase 1 specifically included several transportation items, but the following 3 transportation specifically revolved around microtransit and micromobility. So item T 2.4 talked about improved routes and schedules. T2A1 talked about review of an on-demand door-to-door shuttle service, which is really what we're talking about tonight. And then T2A2 is develop and implement a micromobility policy, but that is dependent on the goal right above that, the T2A1. Next slide. So just a brief summary, and we did provide council an update on those 3 transportation items back in September, but just for just a real quick reminder on them. T2.4, this was the update that was given to City Council in September, is revolving Route 60. It did add a new stop at North Village. This is operational, and it did include a shelter construction, which was completed in 2024. Additionally, we had Route 67, and we are working with Sonoma County Transportation on potential bus charging station. There was grant funding that was received for buses for the charging station. So we're working with them actively right now. There were some delays with this program because of leadership changes with SCT, but it does appear that we're back on track with this program right now. Just a little bit more about what some of their program was and the funding. So it was for the expansion of Route 67, which included $2.12 million, which included funding for 2 shuttles for this route, expand the route to serve Saggio Hills, North Village, and Montage, and then also expand hours to include the morning and evening commutes. In addition to that, the charging equipment and 10 bus shelters, $1.25 million. So we did get quite a bit, or they got quite a bit of grant funds for this particular project, and we are working on that. In addition, there's an additional $360,000, and that was to go to support 4 vans through the CalVans program. And what this was supposed to be used for is to purchase 4 vans for a van pool for agricultural workers. So the state recently, in conversations that we've had with with Freebird, I know Stephen Sotomayor can help us with that. Some recent conversations with them, they indicated that the state indicated that Freebird will likely no longer need to complete this scope for those vans, but the money could be used for another related purpose. So it still has to be used to transport agricultural workers, but there is some funding that's out there. But again, it is one-time funding. It is not ongoing funding. So just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. Next slide. T2A1, so this was conducting a review of on-demand door-to-door shuttle service. So just a little bit of background of what staff has done on this particular climate mobilization strategy goal. In Q1 of 2024, staff did conduct research and outreach regarding on-demand services. From that research, they did put together a pilot program, and it was estimated this pilot program, the estimated cost was about $1.8 million annually. About 1.6 was direct costs, and about 200,000 would have been additional staffing costs. And at that time, it was estimated to cost $65 per ride, and that was in 2024 dollars. Knowing that the city did not have any dedicated funding source for this type of program, staff did submit a congressional funding request for $1.44 million, and unfortunately, the funding was not received. So following that, staff had not done anything further on expanding or looking at microtransit. Next slide. So again, this is an update to the last climate mobilization strategy goal that fell within this first 3-year period regarding microtransit. There is no update to this because it is updating this or fulfilling this particular goal is really dependent on us fulfilling the goal before this, and it will not take place until the feasibility study for microtransit is complete. Next slide. So here we are today. So the discussion in front of council tonight is on November 17th, the city council did express interest in the on-demand microtransit shuttle services. And tonight, staff has prepared a presentation of a draft work plan to further evaluate the feasibility of such on-demand services. Staff has not actually done any of the work plan. We've not explored it any more than what staff has already done in 2024. However, this is just the work plan that we would follow if staff so direct, or if council directs staff to fulfill this. We are seeking city council direction tonight on whether to move forward with doing a draft work plan, to not do a draft work plan, to put it on hold, or if council needs more information to make a decision. Staff involved up to this point was myself, City Manager Kay, our Public Works, Community Development, and Housing Departments. So we've kind of brought in a bunch of different people into the fold to come up with this work plan tonight. Next slide. The draft work plan does have 3 separate phases, and I'll go through each of them tonight. The biggest phase is phase 1, and that's information gathering. It's just trying to find out what information we need to be able to make an informed decision, to be able to bring back, or informed plan to bring back to city council. Phase 2 would be the plan development and options, and then phase 3 would actually be a council presentation and consideration. So next slide. So if we look at phase 1, this is the information gathering stage. We estimate this would take 2 to 3 months. If council directed for us to move forward right away with this, we would look at a time frame for doing this particular phase, or you have to do phase 1. February 2026, going through March or April 2026, just depending on how much staff time can actually be devoted to this. Next slide. There's several different areas that we'd like to gather information. So the first area is with stakeholders. So the desired outcome in this area is to identify and evaluate demand. So what is the ridership analysis? Some of the key questions that we'd want to have answered in this phase is what services are currently provided, what are the hours, the locations they serve, what is the current use and demand, and what are the needs or gaps? Because at this point, we don't know exactly what those are. Potential user groups that we would look at is hotel guests and visitors, residents, healthcare facilities, major employers in the area, Healdsburg workforce, affiliate organizations, and schools. And again, this is just potential. We know that once we start diving down into some of these areas, I think a lot of the potential user groups and the areas that we're really looking at might expand further than this, than what we've identified. Next slide. Other information we'd want to gather is City of Healdsburg documents. So we'd want to identify and evaluate current city documents that might give us an insight into what requirements were made, whether it's through a development agreement or through an environmental impact report. And then also what might our partners be responsible for? So again, what is considered or required in documents? And then right now, the identified ones that we'd look at was Enzo for North Village, Montage for Sagio Hills, and then Appalachian for the North Village as well. Next slide. More information gathering, it would be case studies. So look at other programs. What are other people doing? What questions we'd want to have answered is what have others done? What are the expenses? Since we do not have a dedicated funding source, that's kind of a big thing on our list. Where did or does the funding come from? What is the ridership? What are the hours? What are their successes? And where do they see the programs could be improved? Next slide. Initial list of identified programs to research. We know that there are several of them throughout the state, throughout the country, but locally we'd want to look at City of Petaluma, their Luma Go, which they just launched. Napa Valley Transportation Authority, NVTA, they launched something similar a couple of years ago through grant funds. SMART, Richmond Move, and Palo Alto Link. So those are all items that we initially have identified that we'd want to research. Next slide. We'd also want to look at partners. Granted, some of the partners may overlap with some of the stakeholders, but we really want to look at who is someone that we might be able to partner with for this endeavor. Some key questions, again, what services do they currently provide? What is the use? What are the costs to run? What do they charge? Is there an interest in partnering with the city? A lot of our local hotels might actually have shuttle service they provide. So it's just getting information from them to see if they actually would want to partner with the city. And the initial list of potential partners, again, it's Enzo, Montage, Appalachian, other hotels like Hotel Trio in the area, SMART, and then also looking at the affordable housing sites to see what they have planned or if there's a need there. Next slide. Funding partners, again, because this is an unfunded item, is identify and evaluate potential funding options. Key questions is what funding is available. And if we do have funding that's available, are there limitations on how funds can be used? Are they ongoing funds or are they one-time funds? Initial list of potential partners is Sonoma County Transportation. I think I put that in there wrong. So SCT, Sonoma County Transportation and Climate Authority, the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities, the Sagio Hills Grant, which we briefly mentioned earlier with this Route 67, any funding through the Federal Transit Administration, and if there's any other grants and state funding opportunities. Next slide. The other information we'd want to gather is service options. So what are other service providers that are currently providing services within the city of Healdsburg? So, who can provide the services if we go with a third party? So who can provide the service? What is the estimated cost of the service? Initial lists that we've identified is Via, Mimi, Remix, Waymo. Those are all organizations that already offer the services for a cost. And then the other option look at is a self-funded. Do we look at doing something where we self-fund it, meaning the city of Healdsburg takes on the responsibility and the liability for the funding for it hopefully with some backed grant funding. Next slide. So this is analyzing our current service options. So what do we currently have available? What is the ridership? What are the limitations for each option? Are there overlapping efforts? So this is looking really at the Route 60, the expansion of Route 67, ride shares such as Uber and Lyft, the services women driving women, and then also the drivers assisting seniors in Healdsburg, or the DASH program that the city currently has. So that is phase one. So again, that's all informational gathering. We know a lot of it, some of the same questions, some of the same entities. So there is some overlap in there. We do anticipate phase one would take 2 to 3 months. Phase two would be the plan development and options. And we also estimate this would take 2 to 3 months. And depending when we finish the information gathering, we would start phase two in April or May of 2026 and end in anywhere between June and August 2026. Next slide. The desired outcomes for this phase is to provide information to determine the feasibility and potential launch of an on-demand service. The operational plan considerations, there's several of them that we'd want to look at in developing the plan, is the service area. where would the shuttle operate and what's the boundary? Would it just be within the parameters of the city limits of Healdsburg? Will we go out of city limits? How far out of city limits? Certain questions, if maybe you have an employer, or you have a resident who lives in Healdsburg, maybe they're employed 10 miles outside of the city limits. Would this shuttle service take them to that endpoint destination, or would there still be a gap? So we really want to look at what kind of service area we'd want to put in place for this program. What are the hours of operation? The number of vehicles needed to provide adequate coverage. When they looked at doing the pilot program before, they looked at 2 to 3 vehicles for that pilot program. So we'd want to reevaluate that. What is the ridership eligibility? Is it going to be a free service? Is it going to be a reduced cost service? Who would be eligible for these services? What are the costs to ride? Do we offer discount programs? Next slide. What are the direct costs if we contract out with a service provider? What are the costs incurred by the city to manage the program? Availability of one-time and ongoing funding, and also allocation of responsibility amongst partners for program administration. So if it's something that we are able to partner with other entities, who's going to actually manage that program? So those are things that we'd want to hash out during that program development. Some additional considerations is integration analysis. So how would on-demand service complement or compete with existing routes or services? So let's say we have a Route 60, we have a Route 67, or we have Uber, Lyft. If we implemented something, would it take away ridership from any of those other entities that also might be receiving grant funding? And also looking at a risk assessment. So vendor reliability, funding sustainability, and then also the demand fluctuation and how to account for that. Next slide. And the final phase that we'd look at is developing a work plan as city council presentation and consideration. So again, if we start this right away, if council directs us to move forward, we'd estimate probably bringing this back to council in between July and August of 2026. We'd provide a presentation to council, to city council with a recommendation, and it would really look at the feasibility of actually doing an on-demand service. Next slide. So before council tonight, as we are seeking council direction, if you want us to continue working on a microtransit work plan, on actual development of a plan, alternatives, you could direct staff not to work on an on-demand program and not move forward with this. You could delay working on the on-demand program. So maybe saying we don't want to look at it now, but maybe later. Or if there's any other information that city council might want to make a determination in directing staff on how to proceed. So I know that's a lot of information and try to did it in a condensed manner, but I'd be happy to answer any questions, but really leaving it up to council to deliberate and provide direction to staff whether this is something we wanted to move forward with exploring.
Thank you. That's a lot of information, and we haven't even begun to jump into it. But thank you for all the work that you did to frame this issue for us. Do we have any clarifying questions right now before we go to public comment? Vice Mayor?
Yeah, when we're looking at the information gathering and analysis slide, these are kind of the scope that you see. We would be reaching out questions to get to the different current providers, such as Route 60. This was kind of what you'd send out a survey to these organizations?
No, we have not sent out a survey or done any work on it. These are when we do information gathering, those are the entities that we've identified that we'd want to reach out to just see if we could potentially have any partnership with them. What are their obligations? What are they offering? What are they going to offer? So we can really get a greater idea of what the need is for it and how we can potentially launch that type of program.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Let's go ahead and go to public comment then. Is there anybody here tonight who'd like to speak on this item? Welcome.
Personally, I don't think it's appropriate for the city to be providing transportation for people. I worked for Women Driving Women, and it's currently out of business, so I don't know why it would be up on there. you put 12 to 15 drivers out of business with your dash. So I think it's not the city's business. And I would say, don't work on it any further. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Welcome.
Hello, I'm Mark McMullen from Parkland Farms. I want to just say that I really support the microtransit investigation. I think that going through phase one is a really good move to move this forward. I would really like to see it integrated with the station area plan that will be that's out for consultants' proposals now, because I think that the last mile is going to be very important. I also think that thinking about how we're going to get residents, especially from Parkland Farms, down to the smart station without having to drive is a very important component to making that a successful operation for us. Also, using the microtransit to get downtown without having to wait for the bus, because sometimes it's an hour or more before the next bus comes, and then you just have in the 67 bus it just runs from 9 to 4, so it's not very effective. I really think that this is the transit of the future. I think that it's very important for us to move forward with this. So I would really encourage you to go forward with this study. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the council. Who would like to begin? Councilmember Kelly?
I just want to thank staff first for this very thorough presentation. It's a lot of content and a lot of information. I think a lot about this issue. We know that transportation is the #1 issue affecting seniors in our community. It is also the #1 issue affecting our low-income workforce, as well as young people in our community who want to get from place to place and not have to rely on their parents for a ride. So it's definitely one of those things that can benefit a lot of different user groups within our city. And then what I've seen in a lot of other destination communities, right, thinking about Healdsburg as a place where visitors like to come, and whether when you're a visitor, you could be people who live in Santa Rosa who want to come up for dinner, but also people who are coming to stay here. We've seen a lot of different hotels in our community start their own shuttles because one doesn't exist that meets the needs of guests here. So as well as starting shuttles for their employees because people are parking off site. So there's already quite a bit of money being spent in the community around transportation solutions because the transit that we're currently providing isn't meeting the needs of those folks. So like, what do I mean? The Hotel Trio shuttle that they're paying for well over $100,000 a year to operate that shuttle for their guests. The Montage Hotel also has a guest shuttle where they have vehicles that they're paying tens of thousands of dollars for already to drive people around. Montage also operates a staff shuttle for their employees who are parking off-site to get them to work. The Appalachian Hotel is operating a staff shuttle to get their employees to and from the hotel. And so each one of these separate things that's not coordinating with anyone else is like tens of thousands of dollars that's already being spent. And I've had conversations with each one of the people who kind of oversee those programs and at those hotels, and they all said if the city had a solution, we would certainly be interested in talking about a solution that would work just like they have in insert destination city here, because there's shuttles that exist that work for people who live in the community, people who work in the community, and people who are visiting, and they all get to ride on the same shuttle. There aren't different, statuses of transit solutions. We also are already paying from city funds to subsidize the Route 67. So we already have money in addition to our TDA funds. So the city of Healdsburg's TDA funds that we put into the Sonoma County Transit Shuttle now is about $300,000. So that's money that we could put towards a microtransit shuttle if we decided that the Route 67 isn't meeting the needs of our residents. And based on the information that Sonoma County Transit has about all the shuttles in all the cities, we're not meeting the needs of our residents. People are not actively riding the Route 67, but we're paying about $300,000 a year for an empty bus. So it's wasted money that could go towards a solution that might be more helpful. In addition, we put another $12,000 into it as a city because the Senior Commission did a study in 2018 of their residents or of the senior community and said, what's the number one issue? And people said, we need transportation solutions. So the Senior Commission came to council and council decided with community services that we would put another $12,000 into the Route 67. So we're already putting a lot of city money towards the Route 67 option that's not being heavily utilized. And as Mark McMullen said, the hours that it operates doesn't really meet the needs of the community. So all that to be said, I think that there is a big opportunity prior to when SMART arrives in Healdsburg in 2 or 3 years that we have a more robust transit solution that's modernized. When we say on demand, it's literally like app-based where you just like an Uber, or it's phone-based if you can't use an app, asking them to come pick you up at your location. So it's much more of a door-to-door solution than the Route 67 right now, which doesn't go to anybody's door and is kind of hard to catch. It's free, which is nice. But I think if you added up all of the different sources of funding, plus the money the city's already paying towards the 67, plus the money that's available through the AHSC grant, there is enough to really look at a really robust option that I think people would be expecting to get around our community without having to drive regularly. And so I think as we focus more on an aging community and we're doing a lot to support our seniors and people who may have mobility issues, the idea that it could meet the need of both our residents who are aging, our young people who want to get around who can't drive, our visitors who want to be able to show up here on the SMART train and not have to have a car here, it kind of checks a lot of boxes of a community that cares about how people get around. And with new leadership at Sonoma County Transit, there's a huge opportunity right now to actually do something more interesting than what's been going on historically, which is cruising an empty bus around town and checking a box and saying we're providing transit. So I like the idea that we could have a phased approach to this because I think we already approved it in the CMS, and in theory, if there's funds out there, it's something that staff was already ready to run with should we have gotten the grant that April was talking about previously. So I know it's something that we've talked about before. It's really just a matter of assessing kind of what's already, getting a landscape of all the different partners and people in the community and what's possible. And then also, what are we spending money on now that's kind of wasted, funds that could actually go towards something that people would utilize. And it doesn't have to be like a lifetime decision. Petaluma did the Luma Go shuttle that Assistant City Manager Mitz talked about. They piloted it. And I think they spend $400,000 a year on it, so it's not massive, and they're getting good feedback about it. It was grant funded, so it's a short-term commitment. And then SMART has an on-demand shuttle both at the airport and Larkspur, and it started off as a pilot program. And that on-demand shuttle, it's a small van, and you just order it on an app. Has had record month-over-month ridership increases, and now what was originally thought to be a connection between the SMART station at the airport to the airport terminal is now something that's taking people, both adults who work in the area and kids who go to school in the area. They get off the SMART train and they get on that shuttle, and now it's like, exceeding SMART's wildest expectations about the number of people who are actually using it. So SMART is looking at other shuttle options in other cities where they have stations because it's been really heavily utilized. So all that to be said, I think you all know where I stand on this idea, but that I think having it in a phased approach, and that we could always say, okay, we've received enough information here. We don't want to move forward for all the reasons, or we do want to move forward, but at least having a phased plan and looking to see if folks want to spend time and proceed on at least gathering the information as outlined in the proposal.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a slightly different take. I mean, you mentioned a number of hotels that are already providing this. So first thought that comes to mind is if the business is already providing their own shuttles, why should the city take that over? Clearly the hotels mentioned have found a solution that works for their specific needs, and I support that. I mean, they're really doing it to meet each hotel has a different clientele or, you know, concerns with employees and things like that, and they're solving that. I think when I see this, the big concern I have is really related to the staff lift in terms of multiple departments being involved in facilitating this. And, you know, when we're looking at something that complicated, then I really think it should be discussed during goal setting in a few months when we're looking at the totality of what we have on our, you know, on our collective goals, because they do change. And we look at everything and say, all right, if this is what our focus is, because there was a lot that was listed, then clearly staff is going to be pulled from one thing or another priority. And I think we need to have that conversation in the context of everything as we're trying to map out what we're looking to do. And then finally, similar to housing, you know, we have a housing department, and we've been really good at the city where we've facilitated the acquisition of apartment buildings. And when we did that, we were very proactive in making sure that we didn't end up owning those properties and becoming property managers where we're dealing with broken toilets and tenant complaints and everything else. We were able to get those properties tied up and then turn around, work with Burbank Housing or whoever. Now they're doing the day-to-day management. We get the benefit of people staying in our community. We have new properties that are opening up thanks to our housing department that their primary function is facilitating and finding and structuring the financing for it, working on grant funding. So to me, that is kind of the role of where the city should be on this. And I think one of the things that, you know, when we look at this, and we're all part of the climate mobilization strategy discussion, and I think, you know, at the time, we talked about that being an evolving document. It's, you know, we have a document, but everything is going to be considered in the context of today and where we are today and where things are, costs, whatever is going on. I mean, it's a different world in terms of funding from where we were when we came up with that, when we did the climate mobilization strategy. It doesn't change the important points that were outlined in that. But when I look at this topic, I feel like, you know, we need to make sure that we're not making decisions based on the way things were in the past, and kind of using that to go forward. And we need to kind of reimagine this goal in the context of where we are today and the future that's coming to us very quick. And I would recommend that we change the wording from on-demand microtransit shuttle services to facilitate the rapid implementation of autonomous vehicles in Healdsburg. Autonomous vehicles are, you know, they're scheduled to expand into Healdsburg already. We read about Waymo. There's some that are going to be coming online that are going to be as low as $30,000, the cyber cab. Who knows if that number actually sticks when it comes out. But from what I've read, you know, we're looking at, you know, rates that could be as low as 30 to 40 cents per mile to, you know, to talk about on demand. So San Francisco, I was down at a volleyball tournament in San Mateo. I don't know how many of those Waymo vehicles I saw. And I've never ridden one, but I know a number of our residents have. That's going to be coming here. When you're talking about an app-based service, something that really, you know, how can we encourage those vehicles to be available here, which then would allow us to explore things like grant funding to support, you know, helping out, you know, some of the income-based vouchers or credits on the apps that people can use. I think there's a whole world that can be explored there, but I think that's what we need to focus on is not so much the day-to-day management of a transportation system, but how can we encourage the development of and policies around autonomous vehicles to come here into town, which would really, I think, have a huge impact just across the board for everybody in terms of access to immediate rides. And so when we talk about available funding and, all right, we have this money available, like the Saggio Hills is for, what was it, for the using the grant funds are for using a bus charging station or purchasing a bus, and the bus has been ordered. And then there's ongoing discussions on charger placement. I feel like that's where we need to focus on. We have one of the biggest priorities in the climate mobilization strategy that I was excited about was the infrastructure improvements to support the transition to a more electric economy with more electric cars and electric homes, and trying to get people off of that. How do we encourage that? And I think if we're going to have an electric, whether it's the fixed route bus, electric garbage truck, autonomous vehicles, I'm not really sure where they're all charging, but some of them I think are now going to be wireless charging. I think that's what we need to focus on, is getting ready for the future so that we as a city can accommodate the electric garbage trucks and buses and what are they called? Zooks. My wife said, she's like, oh yeah, it's like no more shotgun. And I'm like, what do you mean? Because I guess they're all facing each other, like every seat's shotgun. So, I mean, that is what's coming very quickly. And so I think there's a way to take the discussion from today and elevate it and kind of reimagine it, to not limit ourselves to just, all right, how are we going to get an on-demand bus? Because if Mark needs a ride from Parkland Farms
I'm not
downtown,
suggesting it's a bus. I'm suggesting it
but
could
right
be
now, yeah.
any one of the things that you're talking about.
Yeah,
It's not a bus,
but
because no one's riding the bus.
okay, can I finish real quick? So that's kind of been the discussion, is trying to get something that's, the discussions in the past were related to a bus. So my focus is, let's get the autonomous vehicles up here. Let's work toward that goal. I want to take a lot of this burden of micromanaging everything off the city and our staff and really focus on the infrastructure side. Those are my comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Mitchell, do you have a comment or question?
Yeah, excuse me. Yes, I do. My concern with the microtransit, first of all, the idea of it sounds good, but I have a hard time understanding quite how it can work in any kind of realistic world, as far as money and resources are concerned. I also am concerned about the amount of staff time that's already been put into this. When you look at all of the management team that's having to deal with this, and the number of hours and the cost, and then having the city take on being a transit operator, I think Councilmember Hagley was kind of alluding to that too. It doesn't, the cost of that, the expertise in that, are we going to have an app that the city's going to have to run? All of those things concern me. But more importantly, I'm concerned about the actual ridership and the cost and the need. Who are we trying to help with this? What people are going to ride? I have no interest, to be honest with you, in subsidizing any of the luxury hotels or luxury senior centers transportation. They're taking it on. They're doing it. I think that's great. Would they even want their customers to be riding a city transportation thing? I don't know, but what's the benefit to the community? And I'm assuming that part of it is going to be the affordable housing places that we are currently building right now when we're taking applications for Saggio Hills, Dry Creek Commons. Those are all under, they're being built now. We're going to look at maybe 200 families that are going to be moving into those. So for me, I would like, if we're going to do phase one, to do phase one after those are built and occupied. And so that we can then question those people. Who's going to use this? Do we have the ridership? And where's the money going to come from? Because, we have frequently gotten money from sources. One-time monies are a problem, right? But we've gotten money for like the L&M, we got money for Foley, and all of those are great, but the city has had to subsidize those to a large degree. And I wouldn't want us to do that with this, especially in the current environment where I don't think federal grants are going to be coming our way anytime soon, especially for EVs or microtransit systems. So I just think the time is not right. So if I were going to choose, I would say, don't work on this now. But I want to put it even past goals and say, let's get these places built and be able to find out from the people who are living in those communities if they would use this service. Because I'm just not seeing. And then the other thing I would say is, the free shuttle, we all say it doesn't work. It's not, it takes too long and so on, and there's money going into it. I did not have any idea that it was $300,000. I had heard much less than that, but nevertheless, why not work with the transit company that's doing that to try to find out why it's not working and could we improve that system? Because we've got a bus, we've got a driver, insurance, all that stuff is already there. So I feel like we're duplicating effort here. And so for me, I have a difficult time supporting this beyond maybe the initial phase. Phase one, is there ridership? Is there demand? And if so, then look at what we want to do further.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Edwards.
Yeah, I think that Councilwoman Kelly has done a great job of kind of reaching out. And if I did when you went through talking about Montage, Enzo, Trio, I look at that as about $700,000 that they are spending. And I would think, but we're looking at 1.8, so we're still 1.1 short. It would be great if I were looking at and heard a presentation from all of those of saying, hey, this would be great because it looks like with the $400,000 that Petaluma is putting in, it would be a deal for them to work with Lumago to come up with something like that. But I don't know why that's not an easy alternative at this point. And to go forward, I think the amount of time, because the questions are just endless on this as far as from the providers. What type of ridership are we getting from Dash? Would we benefit our community by reducing the age of Dash from 60 to 55 or 50 to accommodate those? But without that type of information, I really don't know how deep we want to go into staff in looking up all that. If it's a simple survey that would go out, we could maybe have a goal setting to where we could actually look at, okay, these are the demands. I'm also concerned that if we're looking at older residents, that we are always focusing around an app and having to deal with people and getting phone calls from elderly people of how do I use my phone? How do I do this? It sounds simple to us of using a smartphone, but a lot of seniors have flip phones because that's what's easy for them to use. They can communicate, they want to stay in contact, but they don't want all the, how do you swipe as opposed to tapping? Those are difficult items. So I think that this is looking at Lumago, but I don't know what the ridership of Lumago is. Is that $400,000 just a one-time fee? Is that going to go up and go forward? So this is an extremely complicated issue that I would like to see really detail of from the hotels of how many guests are they transporting currently with their shuttles? What is the Dash ridership? What is the ridership of these routes of Route 60, Route 67, so that we would have a total number? Are we looking at, we need to get 100 people around? Is it 20 people around? Is it 10 people around? And how does that change through season? So it would take a study to do it. And again, would the hotels work, or would I say, don't want to say hotels, I would say the current people who are using shuttles for staff and guests, what their amounts of ridership are estimated, and had they looking into a Lumago, because right off the bat, that looks like a really inexpensive way to approach this. And I don't know why that Lumago is a $400,000 expense, and we're looking at a $1.8 million expense annually. So I need to get more information on those. I think that that's something that's going to take more time. And I know that last year, one of the things we talked about at goal setting is not to pile things on staff. I mean, and what I'm asking is a lot. I see Assistant Manager Mitz writing down a lot of things, and I don't want to pile all of these things on now because each line she's writing is time that's taken away from something else that we decided that we wanted to be important at goal settings. So I think that we have to come back reasonably and address staff time with this, because I see a lot of staff time involved in us becoming a transportation organization, whereas I feel that we have our community has been doing a great job of bringing us funded programs lately. I mean, we've had with the Magical Bridge program are coming to us and saying it, with the continued care program, they came to us and said, hey, here's this, we've worked on these ideas. And I think that I need to see more people in the room who are really demanding this. I know that the Bird Bike did address some. We had data on that, but I don't see that data transmitting to people who can't ride a bike, don't want to ride a bike, and in rain or extremely hot weather. Those are all the things that I think that really need to go for us to have a successful program. We need this kind of data. So those are my thoughts on this right now.
Thank you. I'd like to share a couple thoughts, and I think Councilmember Kelly, you probably have a few more things to add based on some of the conversation here. Am I right? Okay. So I just I mean, a lot of what I'm hearing in terms of concerns, I think they're important concerns, and I think a lot of them are based on, first of all, some assumptions and also some missing information. But what's really before us here is to find out that information. That, in my mind, it makes all the sense in the world to answer the abundant questions that were presented in the agenda report tonight. I mean, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions on the size of this, on the expense of this, who we partner with, how we can maybe we take baby steps with this. Maybe we jump in whole hog and have a transportation department. You know, there's a whole gamut of things, and the idea here is to pare this down and to, really look at real world examples. I think we can learn about ridership without having the people, in the new housing first. I think we can get a lot more data from other similar cities who have not just regionally, but maybe a little further out to get a better idea of the potential success here and problems. And so I definitely want to see this happen. If there's any concern, it's that it says that phase 1 would be completed in 2 to 3 months. That sounds like a rush. I think that's a lot, and I think that's a burden. And so I would like to alleviate that burden and lengthen that out. I don't know if there's anything pressing this along that would have to keep that time requirement short. However, I don't want to put it off until later, as Councilmember Mitchell suggested, because I think the SMART train is coming tomorrow, and that's going to be a huge driver of this whole potential program, whatever it is. And also that, Councilmember Kelly has signaled that there's a change in leadership and opportunities in the transportation world that we need to be ready to take advantage of. I think that's a timely issue. So we can slow this process down a little bit, but I don't want to put it off years. At this point, I think it's time to step forward now. So would you like to comment now, Councilmember?
Sure, thank you. I just wanted to clarify a couple pieces, and I really appreciate everybody's input, because I think it shows kind of when you hear the words microtransit shuttle, that means different things to everybody. So it's really helpful to hear what people are thinking. So I just wanted to comment, Councilmember Mitchell, what I was suggesting is not that we subsidize the hotels, that the hotels are already spending, like Hotel Trio spending $150,000 a year for their shuttle that goes around and around. And they have said, we would be happy to put that $150,000, like we lease these vehicles. When those leases are up and we don't need to renew and purchase new vehicles, we could put those funds towards a comprehensive solution. And they said, and we work in other cities, the guy who owns Hotel Trio, their hotel in Vail pays into the Vail transit thing that's called this, it's like some acronym that's like Snow Bunny or something. But like the one in Napa is called the Vine, which makes sense. I can't remember what the one in Colorado is called. But basically, at a lot of destinations, like the hotels or the HTID in that area pays into a shared shuttle because it benefits all the lodging partners and the people who work there. So similarly, the other hotels that are already paying for their own shuttles have said, we could take the money we're paying separately and put it towards a community solution. So I'm not saying we subsidize them. I'm saying they're going to subsidize the community. I agree totally. I don't think the city should be operating transit, but we are because we operate the DASH program, and that is a transit solution. It's basically like the city purchased these vehicles and we provide volunteer drivers, but we are operating it. People call into the senior center and order a ride, and then they order up someone to go pick them up to go do that. So I think we should get out of the transit business. I don't think it's a good solution for the city to actually operate it. A lot of places that do this, they work with a company. When we did the estimate for Via's the company, it's a third party, they kind of put a map together for Assistant City Manager Sternfels when he was here and said, it's going to cost $1.8 million if you want to serve the whole city. If you want to do a smaller size of the city where you're just doing in town or you're just doing the Healdsburg Avenue corridor, it could be way cheaper. So it's really about the geography and how many vehicles you need and what hours you're running, and that's what determines the cost. That's how Petaluma Transit, who operates LumaGo, the city purchased those vehicles just like we purchased the DASH vehicles, but then their transit provider, like Sonoma County Transit, actually runs their LumaGo shuttle. So the LumaGo is just the name of their van, but it's operated by their transit provider, who's already also doing their bus separately. In Napa, the Vine is operated by the Napa Valley Transit folks who operate the bus there. So similarly, Sonoma County Transit could operate this for Healdsburg. I'm not suggesting that the city operates it or that you call into City Hall and order up a ride. I do think that everything that Councilmember Hagley said in terms of the future of autonomous vehicles is spot on. That is what is happening in most cities. They are transitioning away from, they're moving towards driverless vehicles, and it's happening, relatively quickly. And in other countries, like I'm sure in Japan and other places that are way ahead of the game on the states, that they're doing this at a very rapid rate. I am open to the idea that it's not a bus, that it should be electric, that it could be a variety of different things, but the goal being that it meets the needs of people so everybody doesn't have to, I think everyone in this room mostly, maybe one or two people rode a bike, but most people were one person in a car who drove here and are going to drive home. And the idea being that you could have, you order an app or you call a phone number and they come pick you up at your door and take you where you need to go. And then we don't have parking problems downtown because everybody didn't just all jump in their cars and get here. So I think those are just the clarifying points that I wanted to make. And I think we are utilizing Healdsburg's funds towards the transit bus that exists here now. And we're adding additional funds into it to make it free. We have partners in the community, whether they're housing providers like Freebird, who got these amazing grant funds towards transit solutions, or the hotels. Everyone's kind of doing a separate effort. The senior center's doing the DASH program. In the summertime, community services has to run shuttles to get kids from the community center to the pool and other things. So I think there's a lot of separate siloed efforts that are already happening in Healdsburg. And I think the goal would be that we show leadership and that we bring all of those separate partners together and say, what could we do to bring both guests, seniors, kids wanting to go from place to place and have everybody utilize an option that works for them. In a really small community like this, I think it's possible, and I don't think it would be that complicated to do it. So thanks.
Would you address the concern I had about the timeline for phase one? I thought it was too short and too much of a burden on staff. Is there any danger in lengthening that in your mind?
No, I don't think there's a rush to do it, but I do think that we are going to continue to see, we hear from the community a lot about parking challenges, or we are seeing developments that did not adequately accommodate the need for parking. So what I mean by that is like Montage has all of their staff parking on the basketball courts at the community center. Appalachian Hotel has their staff parking at Simi Winery, and they're shuttling people there. So there's a number of different developments happening in the community. And then we see it with a lot of our affordable housing development, that there's cars parked. You know, if you look at the Harvest Grove apartments, there's not enough parking on site. And so people park all, halfway down the street to try to, park near where they live, because people have 3 cars per household because they don't have another way to get to work. And so I think the idea just being that clearly there's a demand for it. I worry that if we build all the housing and we don't have a transportation solution that meets the needs of those residents so that our working community can get to work and back, that people are going to need to go out and get more cars. And we are designing our affordable housing complexes now. Director Diven, do you know what our parking ratio is for buildings like the new Burbank developments? Is it 1 parking spot per unit, more or less? More or less is what he said. So basically, if you have 3 working people in an apartment and they get 1 parking spot, how are those people supposed to get to work? And so I think, hopefully they're living and working in Healdsburg, but even then, if they, are moving in up by North Village, but they're working down at Lola's Market, that's too long of a distance for a lot of people to walk. And there might not be a transit solution that works based, the 67 ends at 4 p.m. So that type of thing. So I think if we wait until after we've added these, 200 additional affordable housing units to town, which is amazing that we're getting all this housing built, it's going to be too late because people will have already gone out, purchased cars, leased cars. We have an exacerbated parking problem because we're under parking these developments, whether it's the hotels or the apartments or Enzo. And then it just kind of keeps on snowballing. So I think the right time to do it was probably 5 years ago. But here we are. So there's no rush, but, in our lifetime, maybe.
Thank you. Councilmember Higley.
Yeah, I do want to make a comment that part of the reason for the number of cars isn't just because a family has 3 cars, is because there are too many people living in those affordable housing units because we don't have enough housing. So I truly believe that some of those issues will start to resolve as we have new units coming on with our local preference. So I just want to make that point. I think we're all I think we're on the same page in terms of where we think the future is going to be. Personally, when I look at this, when we're looking at the phase one of, stakeholders and all these other things, I truly believe that there's a lot that can be tossed out and really focus on what are the infrastructure needs that are going to be needed and required to be able to accommodate the future that's coming really quickly, whether it's wireless charging for these vehicles or, like I said, the bigger vehicles so that, a garbage truck can charge in Healdsburg instead of charging in Santa Rosa, driving up here and it's, quarter of the battery's gone. So I think there's a bigger discussion that we can look at there that will then accommodate down the road. Right now, the DASH program, are the drivers paid or are they volunteers? So they're volunteers. I mean, I would love to see something where, it is a autonomous vehicle, but, to your point, the seniors can call the senior center and the senior center could send something over. I mean, there's solutions to that ultimately we should get to the point where it is easy and accessible for people to come from Parkland Farms or whatever, and we have those vehicles. I mean, I see that is where the future is coming. So I think the focus really should be on the infrastructure needs that are going to be required to accommodate that. Where are those where are these vehicles charging? Where, all of that. And some of that was touched on related to the electric bus. So that's kind of where I I look at this, I think there's a lot that I think is unnecessary as we look to this next phase and how do we implement this portion of the climate mobilization strategy, which I think is going to be ultimately really good for Healdsburg to where, maybe the hotels are to the point where they're all, requesting cars and saves everybody money. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments right now? I'd like to just offer a summation here, and if anybody needs to say anything about that, I'd welcome that. But it seems to me, I mean, Councilmember Mitchell has concerns about starting this process now, and the rest of the council seems to be has lots of guidance and questions about this potential program, and that all could be incorporated into phase one. I didn't see anybody feel like that time frame that's suggested of 2 to 3 months is necessary. So I would like to relax that and provide the direction that we proceed with phase one, with all these great suggestions that have come forward incorporated. I see you writing feverishly over there. So that's great. I mean, there has been some really cool ideas that come forward here. Leave that as it is. Is there anybody else who has anything? Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't support having staff just go down the path of everything here. I think some of these things like the demand rider, the identify and evaluate demand ridership analysis, some of these other things I think could come from the Sonoma County Transit. Other agencies could do that for us. We don't need staff to be going through all of these things. So, I mean, I don't want to go through one by one at this point, but to me, I think my goal is get the information from elsewhere. We don't need to have multiple meetings. I think we're really looking at what is the demand and what better than a transit agency to kind of help fill that gap or let them do the surveys. And then I just keep coming back to we need to have, if that's what we're looking, then we need to add something that, I mean, we're already looking at the infrastructure, but specific to this that would support the future that's coming right at us.
Thank you. Assistant City Manager Mitz, do you feel like you have the direction that you need?
Generally speaking, yes. From what I'm hearing, looking at some type of phase one, but maybe stripping it down a little bit and being able to slow down the process and not necessarily stick to the aggressive timeline. Just for council awareness, I know you'd mentioned it early about not piling things on goals. This would mean if we move forward with this, that there are other things in our current goals that we are probably not going to be able to get to if we really do want to try to research this. I agree with Councilmember Higley that we will look to see what other information is out there, but that we might not have all the gaps that we want to fill, so we might still need to be gathering information. And looks like City Manager Kay has some comments as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure we have the clarity we need right now, and I'd rather make sure we all leave the room with the same understanding. I think the mayor's point on timing is clear. If that turns out to be the will of the council, we can adjust the timeline. I don't, obviously, much of this work entails talking to potential partners or partner agencies to get information. So in no case do we want to reinvent the wheel if we don't have to. But I also feel a need to caution. I don't think we're calling anybody up and they're telling us what the demand is on a system like this. And I know that wasn't exactly the suggestion, but there's going to be a lot of unknowns in this. And I just want to say that out loud if that's the path we're going on. I don't think of course we can get more information. We propose to do exactly that. But I don't want to give the impression that we'll come back in 6 months or 8 months and say, it'll be another and have some kind of clear, concise articulation of some of these things. It'll be, if you think you got a long presentation tonight, you'll probably get a longer one at that stage as we do our very best to summarize what we've learned and what we think we know. But I just want to be careful that we, don't, if there are specific suggestions about steps not to do, we're all ears. But I don't want to give the impression that we can just kind of whittle it down and do it kind of a skinny version or something more efficient without making sure we're all on the same page about what that means.
It just sounds to me that there's going to be some forks in this road before we get to phase 2, and that we'll probably have to, work with staff at a meeting to find direction once a little more clarity has been achieved on some of these points. Does that make sense?
I think that's accurate. I think, and that's one other way you could look at this. Again, I want to make sure if that is the direction that we leave kind of with the same understanding, it would undoubtedly be possible to break this up and do some and then talk, right, and come back and have a conversation. So again, if that's the goal, the more we hear from all of you, the better on what that looks like. So we're on the same page, but it would be possible to do a check-in earlier, if that's the suggestion.
Okay, Councilmember Kelly.
I think having a check-in earlier would be fine, as long as it doesn't feel like you guys have to spend a lot of energy like preparing a presentation, that it can feel, like a check-in, as opposed to that we all know this is like a work in progress touch point. The only thing I was going to mention for phase 1 is that you guys had identified an initial list of programs to research, and there's one specifically, the Emeryville project that they do, that is something to look into, and maybe take one of the other ones off, like Richmond or Palo Alto. And then I think the partners, I definitely think talking to our business community and talking to the HTID with the chamber, and just making sure they're, looped in, but also getting their feedback. And a lot of other destination communities operate a shuttle. So it's definitely something that has been talked about, I think, in those circles. And then I think one of the other things I'd be curious about is just better understanding our DASH program and the vehicles that the city already owns. And we already have charging infrastructure that's been installed for those vehicles, and that sort of thing. And to see if there is a place in this conversation for DASH or those vehicles, if they're not being heavily utilized, or the program has limitations, is that something that we'd want to consider utilizing it in a different way, potentially? And I don't know what that could look like, but to just help people get around town easier, since we already have all that infrastructure that the city owns. That was it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it would be, you laid out the HTID. I think it would be good that we put these things out to these organizations, because I think the chamber could do a much better job of working with their business community, gathering that information, sending that off to the city. We could get the DASH program to send information off, so that we can say, hey, we are receptive to this from your organizations, so that we're the catcher of it, but we're having them provide us with the information, rather than having staff have to run out and do all the groundwork on this. And I think that HTID, because they would really benefit from this, and they would want to go forward. I'd like to hear more coming from them to us, rather than us having to spend time go forward.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Mitchell, are we going to move off on here? Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, just that I want to make sure that part of the phase 1, which is the first thing, is to figure out the demand and to see, kind of what problem are we trying to solve. I think that's still my concern, that we're going to create a program to solve a problem that we think we know the answer to. We're making a lot of assumptions. We're assuming people are going to have cars because they can't, because there's no bus or transportation. I don't know that that's necessarily accurate. So, we're assuming behaviors that I want us to get more clarity on before we spend a lot of effort, time, and money on a program. That's my concern, and staff time and resources, and that concerns me still.
Agreed, that is definitely well worth looking into. And I think probably one of the main things that should be looked at, it's mentioned, but is just to broaden our scope of different cities. So we get better examples of tourist-oriented communities like Councilmember Kelly mentioned Vail. There's probably some other ones, and other communities that are smaller like us. A lot of the examples that we see here are larger cities, so we don't want to be comparing apples and oranges when we start to look at some of these feasibility questions. So I think we're ready to move on to the next item. So thank you, everybody, for that. Are you okay? All right. Are you good?
I'm good.
Okay. So we'll move on to 9B, Council Subcommittee Appointments to interview applicants for the Parks and Recreation Commission and Senior Citizen Advisory Commission. City Clerk.
Good evening, Mayor Herod, council members. As Mayor Herod stated, the action this evening is to appoint two council subcommittees to interview the applicants for the Senior Citizen Advisory Commission and the Parks and Recreation Commission. The deadline to apply for both commissions was January 7th, and we received 4 applications for each commission, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, how many vacancies did we have on both commission?
There are 2 vacancies on each. Both incumbents applied for Parks and Rec, and 1 incumbent applied for the Senior Citizen Advisory Commission.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to go to public comment first on this. See if there's anyone in the room who would like to speak on this item. Seeing none, we'll bring it back. And I guess we'll just do one by one. Start with the Parks and Rec Commission. Do we have anybody interested in serving on that subcommittee who would like to raise their hand?
I'm happy to do it, but I don't have to. I just want to mention one thing, that I'm delighted how many people applied and that the incumbents reapplied, because it means they're enjoying the work and they're interested in continue serving. And I think that that just is a good sign. We've had a number of these in the past where we didn't have enough applicants who were interested. So great job in getting the word out to our staff. And also I'm glad to see that there's folks who are interested.
It is a good sign. All right. Okay, so we'll vote on that in a moment. But Council Members Kelly and Hagley are interested in that. I just want to double check with Council Member Mitchell because you're remote and I may have lost track of your interest, but.
Thank you. I appreciate that. No, I'm fine with Councilmember Hagley and Kelly doing that. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And volunteers for the Senior Advisory Commission.
I will step forward.
Okay.
I thought you would. I'd be happy to do that as well.
Okay, so we have Councilmember Mitchell and Vice Mayor Edwards interested in the Senior Advisory Commission subcommittee. So can we have a motion to appoint? I think we can do it all at once.
I move that we form a subcommittee to interview the Parks and Recreation Commissioners made up of Councilmember Hagley and myself, and a subcommittee for the Senior Commission Advisory Committee interview subcommittee to be Councilmember Mitchell and Vice Mayor Edwards.
I'll second that.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Hagley?
Yes.
Councilmember Kelly?
Yes.
Councilmember Mitchell?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Edwards?
Yes.
Mayor Herod?
Yes. All right. Thank you, everybody. Exciting to see changes that may or may not be coming to those commissions. And thanks again to anybody who's listening who did apply. It's really great to see interest in serving the community. So we will move on to 10 council reports on matters of interest. Who would like to go first?
I'm just headed up to Sacramento for the Strategic Issues Conference for NCPA, so I'll have a better report at the next council meeting.
All right, thanks. Not ready. Okay. Vice Mayor Edwards.
Yeah, I was, going back before our break, it was really nice to see an equally high turnout for the last day of Hanukkah. Because it's interesting, everybody was there the first night, but it was really nice to see that we still had a lot of community involvement that showed up for that last night, which was really, really striking, particularly since it was raining that night. It was a really good turnout to show our community supporting our Jewish community. I attended the APIC annual meeting on Saturday, which was heartbreaking in some ways, of hearing what some of our communities are going through with the immigration, how far back they are going. And it was just, I feel it would be nice if more of our community could hear the actual stress that this has been putting on people who have been here for 50 and 60 years. It's not just current people. These are people who thought they had cleared all the hurdles. They've gone through it and then finding out that, oh, there's something that we may change now. So that was a good meeting for that one. And I went to the All Cities Chamber meetings out at Baki, or where all of these Chamber of Commerces throughout the cities had some meetings. So it was a really nice opportunity to meet with other council members, other business people throughout the community, having them come here to Healdsburg to have an open meeting. So that was it for me.
So you were at the Russian River Watershed Association with me. So I'll start with that one. I think you wanted some more time, right? So yeah. Okay. The Library Advisory Board meeting was really interesting, with a glimpse into the need for Wi-Fi access in our community, which is great, and being met aggressively by our library. But there was a great discussion about forward steps so that more people can have access to internet who need it. I went to the Council and Mayor's Association Board meeting, where it was a general discussion about grouping goals for that organization for the year ahead. And I was pleased to be asked to introduce the beginning of the winter session for the Jazz Fest at the Raven Theater. So that was a lot of fun. And Vice Mayor Edwards, thank you for reporting on the last night of Hanukkah. I was at Hanukkah dinner. I wanted to go to that, but I'm super glad to hear that it was so well attended. Okay, Councilmember Kelly, you can wrap it up.
I'll just finish with, really appreciate the council showing up for our Jewish community, especially this year because Hanukkah was so much later and already into the winter break. And I think it's especially meaningful for our community to be able to gather in the gazebo and to light the city's Hanukkah and to celebrate together. So thank you for continuing to support allowing that to happen, and for our entire council to show up together on the first night of Hanukkah, I think was really a beautiful demonstration of our support to the community, especially in light of what had happened the day prior in Australia when there was a terrible shooting at a Hanukkah candle lighting event. So thank you all, and I'm very excited about this year ahead with our new mayor and vice mayor. Great job on your first meeting, and I'm looking forward to fun 2026.
Great. I'm excited as well. So what? Oh, Evelyn, I'm sorry.
Out of sight, out of mind, right?
Yeah, kind of.
I understand. It's hard to run a meeting with someone remotely and remember they're there. But anyway, I don't really have a whole lot to report. Our protocol meetings that we've had, attended those, of course. My first chamber liaison meeting was canceled, so I spent a couple hours getting ready for that, and then it got canceled. So hopefully there'll be one next month. And other than that, nothing to report. I'm in Sacramento. I thought you were going to be here too, David, but
it's my punishment for forgetting to post the agenda. So I'm going to be driving up after the meeting now.
He'll be there soon.
I thought about that. So yeah, I'm here for the Department of Consumer Affairs California Veterinary Medical meeting. So not necessarily related to city council per se, but a lot of legislation that's happening at that board level. A lot of it's animal welfare stuff, so it's right up my alley, and a lot of great people. So it's a fun board. So anyway. good job, Chris, on your first mayor thing. I appreciate it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm excited for the year ahead, and I'd like to adjourn the meeting at 8:15.